Oil prices are rising as tensions in the Middle East grow and shipping through the Strait of Hormuz becomes more risky. The big question now is, could Russia actually benefit from this crisis and higher oil prices? And what could happen to global energy markets if this conflict drags on? To discuss this, I'm joined by Dr. Thomas O'Donnell, an American energy and geopolitics strategist based in Berlin. Dr. O'Donnell, it's a pleasure to have you here again.
Always a pleasure, Natalie. Thank you.
So, Dr. O'Donnell, oil prices have already jumped because of the tensions around Iran. And some analysts say this could help Russia financially. Do you think Russia could become one of the main beneficiaries of this crisis? Or is that too easy to say?
Well, I think the real issue is if what the Americans are trying to do, Trump and his cabinet are trying to do in Iran, goes badly, then it would benefit probably the Russians. It would benefit the whole axis of people who are aligned with the Russians. Of course, the Iranians are one of their main allies in this war, have provided them with a lot of military equipment, drones and so forth. But yes, if it went badly, if the Straits of Hormuz, for example, as you mentioned, remained closed for a long period of time and the Americans weren't able to guarantee passage for ships, the price would start going up more and more. I would just mention that right now, yes, the price of oil jumped about $12 a barrel since last Friday. But if you look at where the price is, this is roughly where the price was once. Let me put it this way. When the war began in Ukraine, the full-scale invasion by the Russians, of course, the price spiked in 2022. It went up to, 120 or so dollars a barrel at one point, and then it started coming down. But all through 2023, 2024, and into 2025, the price was about what it is now, maybe in the $80 a barrel. It has been getting unusually low in the last, about a year, okay? It was down to 60 and in the 70s. And I think the fact that the price of oil was so low was a big advantage for Trump when he decided to, for the Americans, when they decided to start this war with Iran. There's been so much extra oil in the market for well over a year that the prices continued going lower and lower. OPEC was putting more oil on the market. The Saudis were pushing to return oil to the market. So OPEC Plus has something like another 3 million barrels of production a day that's still offline that they hadn't put back on the market. So I think the first thing to look at here, if we step back and look at this historically, the Americans never had such a good objective market situation if they wanted to go after Iran and take Iran offline for some period of time. It's a very good situation that they're starting from. But yes, if the war isn't resolved for some period of time, the price would start spiking. But I wouldn't even call what's happened so far a spike, really, in historical terms.
Yeah, that's what I think. Because, Dr. O'Donnell, when you're opening right now news feeds, it's so different thoughts over there, like Russia will benefit from this, Russia will not. United States doing this or that, Iran doing that or this. And it's so easy to lost in all this news analysis and that appearing right now on the internet. So from your perspective, how do you see the bigger geopolitical strategy behind all this? Some analysis say that the United States is trying to reshape the global energy and geopolitical landscape, and not only the Middle East, but also involving Venezuela, Iran, of course, and Russia that you mentioned, and China and India. So do you think a larger U.S. grand strategy is emerging here?
Yes. I think that the Trump administration came to power this time. I mean, he had some of these ideas the first time he was in office, but he wasn't able to organize it. This time when he came into power, he had this idea of reorganizing the international oil sector we could talk also natural gas and other energies, but the main thing right now in our discussion is oil. He had the idea of, it's what he calls U.S. energy dominance. He formed a committee that his people in his cabinet are in charge of, called the U.S. Energy Dominance Committee. Now, the Democrats wouldn't use those same words. It sounds rather chauvinist, of course, right? But Democratic experts that were with the Democratic Party 5 and 10 years ago were writing books, excuse me, about how the fracking revolution in the United States was supplying so much oil so cheaply to the market that it was just logical that the United States would start using this as a geoeconomic lever. And Trump is just simply doing it now rather aggressively. And if you look at his cabinet, I would say people like his energy secretary, Chris Wright, and his interior secretary, Doug Burgum, are both oil and gas experts. Really experts. Were CEOs of companies that made $1 billion on this. One was the governor of I think it's the third largest oil producing state in the country. And they're very much behind this strategy. But to answer your question, what is the strategy? In broad strokes, I think what's going on here is, Trump, first of all, China is very dependent on imports. And you know that there's this struggle over various types of raw materials and also over critical minerals as well as chips. And China has some advantage in critical minerals. The United States has a great advantage globally in oil. And I think they're getting ready to use that against China. So the first thing is, let's back up, because the real issue is how this really came out most strongly was in the war in Ukraine, the Russian war on Ukraine. So, I have this report I published a month or so ago called Liquidating the Russian Petrostate. And what I trace in there is that in about April or so of last year, everybody knows Trump at first had this idea he could offer Mr. Putin big enticements. We'll make big investments in Russia. This is better for your country than what you're doing in Ukraine. And maybe I guess he was surprised that wasn't what Putin was interested in. So as many people predicted, it didn't work. So around April or so, there was a discussion in the White House and debates in the cabinet. And I think they started a new policy. And this policy was to inflict pain on Russia to force an end to them to agree to the end of the war. And the main way, the feeling in Washington is very strong, Democrats and Republicans, the main way to inflict economic pain on Russia is to cut off their ability to export oil, because this is the biggest contributor to their national budget and to their war budget. And it's not just the trouble they caused in Ukraine, but the trouble they've caused in Africa, Latin America, and other places is all financed by this. And so the plan has been to increase the sanctions from outside. The United States was increasing the sanctions and tariffs to make it difficult for Russia to export oil. They threw away the oil price cap strategy. That did not work, and it wasn't really designed to work. They thought they could actually take Russian oil offline. And the other side of the same campaign was American intelligence, and this has been revealed now by interviews in the New York Times a few months ago. American intelligence actually in Ukraine proposed this to help with this new campaign that Ukraine has been carrying out for some months now against Russian refineries, Russian export terminals, ports, and other pipelines and so forth. So it's a two-pronged attack on Russian oil to prevent its ability to export oil to India, China, and Turkey. It's really only China is left now. At the same time that Ukraine is hitting ports, is hitting refineries. And when they hit the refineries, they have to export oil they can't refine. And the whole system is starting to clog up. Now, I think what the Trump administration, I'll stop in a second, but I think what the Trump administration has decided to do before going the next step and actually blocking the export of Russian oil, there was enough oil in the market short term, but they're worried about longer term. So they wanted to get Venezuelan oil online in support of the West before they do that. And I think they want to take care of Iranian oil too. So Iranian oil won't be used to substitute for Russian oil and that kind of thing. So I think this is both part of the greater project before they move on to fully cut off Russian exports, which they're perfectly capable of doing.
So first was Venezuela, then Iran. Who's next?
Well, I mean, in between there was India. Now, India was one of the biggest buyers of Russian oil. When Trump went after India, he said, "You stop buying this oil, or I'm going to put, huge tariffs on your country." Everybody thought he was bluffing. Why? I mean, how would he dare do this to a country that's supposedly an ally, but at the same time is taking all this Russian oil? They really didn't care. They were just taking cheap Russian oil. They didn't really care about, objectively, they didn't care about the war in Ukraine. But the reality is, he actually really squeezed India and he got Modi to agree not to take the oil. People thought this was just crazy here in Europe that I talked to a number of experts. India will never stop taking oil. He did something to get them to stop taking oil. Not only did they stop taking Russian oil, the Indian Coast Guard has seized at least 3 Russian shadow ships. Nobody ever imagined they would flip and go that far. And another country, Malaysia, which, Russia has this problem. It's running out of markets, but it's pumping oil, and it's got to put the oil somewhere. And it's running out of markets, and it's got to export more oil because the Ukrainian forces are hitting the refineries. They can't refine it. So they have to do something with it. And they were storing oil in Malaysia. Now the Americans, the Trump administration, has got Malaysia actually seized a Russian shadow fleet ship. Okay? So all these countries have been flipped in some way. And Russia is getting squeezed and squeezed. And India is a complicated case. I think India, we're learning now, there's something to do also with what's going on in Iran. Iran, mainly over the years when it was under sanctions, supplied oil to India, and then lately that was getting harder to do, and they're mainly supplying it to China. So this is something of concern for India because the Persian Gulf, Iran in particular, but the Saudis supply their oil to the Far East. It's just natural when you come out the Persian Gulf that you go that direction. And what's quite interesting is Modi visited Netanyahu just before he began the attack on Iran and killed the Iranian leadership. What was that about? What was Modi there? And also, Pakistan started to attack the Taliban. Pakistan borders Iran also. Now, so we're starting to learn that, I think, see the picture here. The Trump administration has something to do with this. How should I say? I think India is going to be taken care of in the oil sector. Modi feels that the Americans will take care of him. Oil from the Gulf, oil from the United States, oil from Venezuela, when Russian oil is taken offline. And to get Modi not to be so nervous about what's happening to in the Persian Gulf, what's happening to Iran, apparently the Indians work closely with the Taliban, and they have somehow provoked the Pakistanis to attack the Taliban, which you could interpret that as the Pakistanis are now distracted. Normally, the Pakistanis might aid the Iranians because they're on the border. They had a history of aiding them, but now they're distracted with the Taliban, probably because of something India did. So as you see, there's a kind of a complex plan here.
That's very ironically, because I just checking the prices for gasoline in Ukraine, and it dropped twice. And it's super unlogical, because I believe you that the spike is not that high that it could affect gasoline prices in Ukraine. But speaking about the Ukrainian successful strikes, there are also new reports that Ukrainian drone attacks have disrupted Russian oil exports, including operation at the Novorossiysk terminal on the Black Sea. And because of that, Russia is reportedly struggling to increase shipments even with global oil prices rise. Okay, Dr. O'Donnell, but then I'm still curious if the conflict will drag on for much more than just the 2 weeks. Let's assume it's going to happen for a few years, because I've heard such an assessments from analytics, military analytics. What's then?
Well, I think we have to try and discern what is the aim of the American and Israeli attack. I mean, the Israelis and the Americans have many aims in common, but they also have somewhat different aims. For the United States, I think it's the truth when Rubio said this the other day, but could have been said by a number of American presidents before. Number one, they don't want Iran to ever get a nuclear weapon. Now, Iran was hit very hard in the nuclear program, and that was set back quite a bit. But there's another thing. Today, with modern rocketry, if you develop sufficiently rocketry, long-range ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and now long-range drones, in a way, these are very pinpoint, and they can, if you have enough of them, they can essentially accomplish what nuclear weapons accomplish like a big hammer. Nuclear weapons might blow up a whole city, but if you have enough precision rocketry and drones, you can hit all the command and control leadership of your enemy. So it was a very big problem for the United States going forward that Iran might go over a certain limit and get so many missiles, so many drones, that there's really nothing you can do about it. And you can see some of what they're capable of doing by, they've hit a number of all the targets they've hit throughout the Middle East and also in Israel. So I think they want to destroy that. Back when Obama negotiated the end of the Iranian nuclear program, the issue of the missiles was there. And the whole thing, they argued for some days over the missiles after they had the agreement to knock down, to end the Iranian nuclear program, but they couldn't agree. So they agreed to disagree. They had a deal on nuclear, and the missile program was for the future. They're going to deal with it in the future. Now, when Trump came in, that wasn't good enough for him. He threw away the nuclear one and went after the question of missiles and other issues. Okay, I don't know if that was the wisest thing to do. Maybe he should have just gone after the missiles and left the nuclear deal in place. But anyway, that's what he decided. And I think for the United States, in this whole region of the Middle East, it's very important geoeconomically and geostrategically to the United States. Historically, it's oil, of course. Even though the United States is by far the biggest producer of oil and gas in the world, as you know, 20% comes out of oil comes out of the Persian Gulf, and about 20% also of the world's LNG comes from Qatar out of the Gulf. Mm-hmm. So this is a place with the United States being so involved with the world oil and gas system that they want security. But also, these countries, a lot of them are centers of international finance and other similar things. Okay, and so in order to secure long-term stability of the region, that the Iranians aren't a threat, and also a threat to Israel through their proxies and through their missiles, the United States decided, okay, it's gone too far. We have to put an end to this. So I think what's going on here, they would like to put an end to their ability to have nuclear program, their ability to have missiles, and I would add their ability to sell their oil to whoever they want, their ability to sell their oil to China in any way they want. So I think the United States wants to step in. What they would prefer to do is not, there's a lot of discussion in the press about this, they would prefer not to do regime change, to knock the regime down totally and try and rebuild another one. Both J.D. Vance, with his experience, he had served in Iraq 2 or 3 times in the Marines, and Trump's followers and many Democrats feel that that's just not something the United States wants to do. That would be foolish. So I think their preferred plan is to have something like happened in Venezuela. Pete Hesget, the American Secretary of War, he said, no, we don't want to do regime change. We want to change the regime. Okay. So I think what I would put it this way, they want to they want to alter the regime. They want to make the regime will still be some repressive, not completely democratic regime, but it has a regime that will obey the American rules as far as weapons, missiles, nuclear, and the oil sector. I wouldn't be surprised if they forced the Iranians that the money that comes from oil goes in some account that they have control over. That's the way it still is in Iraq from the Iraq War. So I think that's their goal. However, if they can't do that, if you look historically, this is something I've been working on for 30 years, this Iran conflict over nuclear and so forth. Historically, if they weren't able to constrain or control Iran, they threatened to, quote, bomb it back to the Stone Age. So I think these are the two things on the table, even though they're not saying this one. They're trying to get the regime to make some deal. Not that it necessarily has to completely go, but make a deal that they will operate within the rules that the United States sets, and especially in the oil sector and with weapons. If not, they will bomb the country back to the Stone Age, as many administrations said previously, in which case it won't be a threat to anybody, it would be contained. And I think this is the aim.
The recent statement of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, in her recent statement, she said that by invading Ukraine, I mean the full invasion of Ukraine by Russia, they kind of opened this Pandora's box. And now everything, the after effects, they are inevitable. And all this conflict on the Middle East looks like a serious war to me, to be honest. It's also like a result of Russia's war in Ukraine, of that Russia is attacking neighboring country and still sitting at the Security Council of the United Nations. So from your perspective, is that the same chain of reactions?
Everything's in play. And it's mostly the Russians' fault. It's also the Chinese fault. So look, if we step back a little bit and look at it, what has Trump done with Russia, or the Americans before that even? They're telling Russia, look, you can be part of the Western world. People will invest. The Europeans will invest in you. They'll buy your oil and gas. You got to stop this. You got to get out of Ukraine and not commit aggression. And by the way, no more aggression in the Middle East. No more aggression in Africa. No more playing games in Latin America. That's not what Putin, for whatever reason, we could go out and have a whole show about this. He says no. Trump understood this after a few months. He's not a fool. He understood this. Okay, we got to do pain. I can do pain. That's a quote from Trump. And that's what's going on here. Excuse me. I have to plug in. There we go.
Dr. O'Donnell. I'm finishing. I'm absolutely agree with you, because this kind of a double game from the United States towards Russia, towards India as well, because despite the fact that they were putting a red carpet in Anchorage in front of the Russian dictator, they're still making a lot of pain to Russia. Sanctions and the attitude of the White House and other American politicians.
Yes, it was like, give up this foolish war. Look, join back to the West. Trump's thing is he would love to pull Putin away from Xi Jinping. So Xi Jinping is more and more isolated. And everything he's done in reorganizing the oil sector, going after Russia, getting India to stop taking Russian oil, going after Iran, going after Venezuela, all that is isolating China more and more, who's very dependent on oil flows internationally. So, if Russia's not going to agree to do something reasonable, we're going to destroy your ability to do this in the future. Now, it's essentially what he's telling the Iranians. Look, we did lots of nasty stuff. You killed probably 30,000 people overnight, right? You did lots of nasty stuff. If you want to live with us, you can, make a deal and live with us, and we'll let the people take care of you in the future. But just, don't make trouble. Don't make trouble. Don't support wars, don't build nuclear weapons, and so forth. If not, we're going to smash you. Sorry, we're going to smash you. And essentially, that's what they're telling the Russians. Your whole strength is based on exporting oil. If you don't make a reasonable deal, well, we don't need your oil in the world anymore. We produce as much, much more oil than you produce. We produce much more than Saudi Arabia. And we're getting all these other countries on our side that we're going to help them increase their oil production. And your measly 3 or 4 million barrels a day that you export now from your Western ports, the world doesn't need it. And what will you be? You'll be a country, Russia, with an economy maybe the size of Brazil, but, you're going to have to work for your money now. You're not going to get it from oil. And you're not going to be able to cause trouble all over the place in the world. And I think that's what this is about as far as Russia is concerned. And there's something similar being done to stepwise isolate China also.
Thank you, Dr. O'Donnell, for putting everything on its places. It's like, the puzzle is my head, is like click. So thank you so much again for your time.
A lot of things can go wrong.
Well, we will see how the situation will evolve in the nearest days. And I'm pretty sure there will be some huge news, and we're going to see. Thank you so much.
Okay. Slava Ukraini.